You weren't arrested that day. You were arrested like
12 days later. 12 days later.
What was their explanation for that, if I can ask you?
Well, they had it all trumped up when they came to my house.
Mm-hmm.
It was all fixed.
Yeah.
You know, so I asked them what did they want, and they said, well, we want to take you downtown. I said, for what? They said, for the assassination of Malcolm X. I said, you got to be joking.
It all stems from the Attica Rebellion in September of 1971. At that time, Thomas Hayer was then an inmate at Attica, and he was sort of the head of the Muslim guard that guarded the prisoners, the hostages taken in the rebellion. You know, there were some 50 hostages taken by the rebellious inmates. And I got to talk to him a little up there, and I had known that at the trial he had said, as he took the stand, and first said he had nothing to do with it, then came back to the stand and testified for the other brothers, saying that yes, he was there and he was part of the assassination crew, but that these two brothers were not. And then he was asked by the district attorney on cross-examination to give up the names of the four brothers he said were with him, and he refused to do that. He was between a rock and a hard place, because he didn't want to be an informer on one hand, and yet he wanted to tell the truth on the other. So the names never came out, and during summation, the district attorney, who's just recently died, Vincent Dermody, took the position in front of the jury that Hayer was lying, that he was so clearly guilty that he could not avoid being convicted, but he was trying to save his two Confederates by giving this cock and bull story that four other people and himself were the real murderers. And then I brought that up at Attica when I spoke to him. I said, how about getting those names? We can do something. We can get two innocent brothers maybe out of jail by a court proceeding. And first he wouldn't do it at all. This is in 1971. And the years rolled by after that. I had no contact with him. And then I met a Muslim chaplain in the prison system by the name of Nuruddin Faiz. And Nuruddin, when he heard the story from me, said maybe I'll go up and talk to him. I see him pretty regularly as the Muslim chaplain.
What kind of men are Norman Butler and Thomas Johnson?
I know very little about them except that they were both married men and both had excellent alibis. Not only alibis from their family, but alibis from people who called in at the time Malcolm was murdered or who were visiting at the time Malcolm was murdered, and both men were home. Butler had been to a hospital earlier that day, had a very bad leg condition, could hardly walk, and was back home at the time Malcolm was murdered. And Johnson, I don't think had ever left his home. He was still in pajamas when Malcolm was murdered. But the point was there were some ID witnesses who in that hectic moment there said they could identify them as being in the room and firing at Malcolm. But eyewitness testimony is terribly unreliable, probably the most unreliable of all, particularly when you have a hectic situation.